Hey, so did you know that 1 in 5 American households have a negative net worth? It actually turns out that a lot of people don't start saving for retirement until much later in their life. And so I want to break down 9 different levels of financial independence. And I want you to see where you rank among this. So write this down, where you actually rank among here. And then think about where you want to be 12 months from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, where you want to stand so that you can think about how to set yourself up for financial success. And I don't want to directly correlate financial success and independence with happiness because obviously they're not directly correlated, but as Tim Ferriss put it, it's pretty rare to see somebody frowning on a jet ski. So let's get into these 9 different levels and see how we can advance upon these. So the first one is total dependency or even bankruptcy. Now, the dependency phase can come to everyone. When you're a newborn baby or a child, you have no skills, you're not able to meet any of your financial obligations, but people in their grown-up lives can find themselves in this position as well if they have to file for bankruptcy. So this is the point where you're not able to meet your financial obligations and there's really no feasible option and no possible way for you to dig out of the debts that you might be in. And this is obviously the worst position to be in. That's why it is stage number 1. Now, stage number 2 is the solvency stage. And this is actually what a lot of people find themselves in. And it's pretty sad to see this, but it does happen. This is the point where you're maybe able to meet somebody for your minimum credit card payments. You're able to avoid getting the electricity shut off. You're able to avoid getting evicted from your apartment, but you're still racking up more debt every month. Your total income is not matching up to your total expenses, which might be up here. Your income might be down here. This is also where you'll see a lot of people on food stamps, on welfare, or on other government assistance programs, or from their local community, maybe soup kitchens. But it's obviously a position that nobody wants to find themselves in. But sadly, millions of people find themselves in this level of financial independence at just number 2. So the third level of financial independence is what we would classify as the break-even level. So this essentially means that if you are spending $2,500 a month, you're making $2,500 a month. So if you have $50,000 in debt, you would maybe find yourself in this position if you're not increasing that level of debt more and more on a monthly basis. You're at the break-even point where you are sustaining your level. So you don't have to file for bankruptcy, but you're not increasing your wealth at that either. So it's the break-even point, and those are really the 3 main categories for the first 3, which is the survival phase of financial independence. There's really 3. There's survival, and then we have the comfortable phase, and then we have the thriving phase, each one with 3 separate subcategories. So now we're moving into the number 4, 5, and 6, which is the comfortable phase of financial independence. And number 4 is what we would classify as stability. Now, with this, you're able to get to the point where you only have good debt. So maybe you still have a mortgage, maybe you have student loans, but you're able to get rid of your consumer debts, and you're also able to build up somewhat of an emergency fund, or put some money in the bank, or put some money into investments, maybe $10,000 to $20,000 or more of just kind of a buffer for your assets. And that is what we classify as number 4 as the stability phase, where you're starting to see that turnaround. You're starting to see some progression there. But then we move into number 5, which is the security phase. Now, in the security phase, you've gotten to the point where your total assets now outnumber your total liabilities. And what we're talking about here is that your total assets outnumber your mortgage, outnumber your student loans. And so it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily pay off your mortgage in cash right away, but it means that if you wanted to, you have enough assets that cover any other liabilities that you might have in your life besides investment properties for obvious reasons. And so if you lost your job, you'd still feel comfortable for the next 12 to 24 months without wondering where your next meal would come from. If you are in stage number 5, you have a little bit of a buffer built up. But then we get into what we would call the initial independence phase. And this is really kind of a great feeling to be in. This is when you can finally say that you could stop working and you could live off of your investments, withdrawing a certain percentage per year, probably pretty low of a percentage, but you could live off of it, bare bones basics. We're talking live, like keep yourself alive. We're talking about feeding yourself, clothing yourself, and keeping a roof over your head. And that's about it. We're not talking about Wi-Fi bills or phone bills or TV bills. We're talking about basic, bare bones essentials to keep yourself alive that is the initial independence phase. And it is kind of a nice feeling to know that if you quit your job today, you could live off of those investments for a very long period of time. Maybe you're running by the 3% rule or the 2% rule, the 4% rule off of your investments. But it is actually what some people find themselves retiring in at this stage. So without a doubt, the last three stages of financial independence are much more difficult to obtain, and this is for obvious reasons. Now, number 7 is what we classify as the freedom stage of financial independence, and this is somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 per year that you're able to withdraw from your investments to not only live comfortably, not only to be able to supply those essential needs from stage number 6, but now you can live comfortably. So now you can go on some small trips, you can maybe go on a cruise, maybe spend more time with your family, but you have much more freedom with your time because you don't have to rely on your job. You can essentially not have a job. This is what a lot of people find themselves in retirement. Most people who are retired find themselves in stage number 6 or stage number 7 along this list of financial independence. The 8th phase is when you get into the abundance, and this is to the point where you're probably making close to $1 million from your investments. This is pretty far-fetched for the average person, but once you get into this phase, we're talking about luxury cars, we're talking about the ability to buy luxury items without sweating it, without worrying about whether or not it's worth the price difference, because it just doesn't matter. The final one here, number 9, is one that is obviously the most difficult to obtain, but there's really 2 different ways to get to it. Now, one of them, the most obvious, is to actually become a billionaire, somebody where money is almost non-existent. It's something that we would call the infinite phase, where money is really non-existent. If you have Bill Gates, he goes to a Ferrari dealership. He could buy Ferraris all day long and never run out of money. But then there's also another route to get to this, and that's something that we would kind of think as the personal branding ability. So think about U.S. presidents, or think about Michael Jordan. Let's take Michael Jordan, for example. If he spent all of his money, he had $0 in his bank account, $0 in assets. He's arguably the best basketball player of all time. Let's not get into the details of that. But if you had somebody like that, he could never run out of money. It really doesn't exist for him. It's non-existent because he's Michael Jordan. Anything he touches can turn into 50 grand. He gets up on stage, gives a speech, he makes 100 grand from it. So that's the point of this, as goes with presidents. Barack Obama might not be a billionaire, but money doesn't really exist to him, because if he wants to do something, if he wants to go anywhere, he gets up, gives a speech, he makes 100 grand from it. So those are really the 2 different ways to get to level 9, where money becomes non-existent. It never even crosses your mind whether you should take the Uber or the bus, because you can always take the Uber, or you can just pay a private person to drive for you for wherever you need to get to. So those are the 9 different levels. Hopefully you can kind of see where you stand on this list and where you want to be in the future. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.